Welcome to Womb Talk. I'm your host, Elizabeth Vanderwalt, a holistic doula and a women's health coach, and the founder of Fruitful Womb Doula Services. This space is for every woman who is walking the path of deeper healing. So maybe you're tending to your fertility, you're carrying life, you're grieving loss, or you're even easing into the wisdom of menopause. Here we honor the full spectrum of womanhood through story, nourishment, and sacred conversation. So let's settle in, take a deep breath, and begin. Today, we have the wonderful Lena with us, who is a holistic feeding specialist and a pediatric speech language pathologist. Hopefully, I said that correctly.
Did.
She is going to talk to us today all about picky eating and realistic steps to make those meal times easier. So, the floor is all yours, Lena. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe the business side and the personal side.
Yeah. So again, I'm Lena. That's usually what people call me online in the space. My full name is Paulina Livinsky, but I think Lena just is easier usually. So I'm a mom, like you said, a pediatric speech language pathologist, and I've been in the field for about 13 years now,
Oh,
which is
wow.
really aging myself, but here we are down the line. So I focus on helping parents of picky eaters navigate the ups and downs of picky eating through my Bloom framework that I created, which is very much rooted in biology and connection, but a little bit outside of the spectrum of speech pathology. I am originally from Poland, so that's where I was born and raised, and I've lived in the United States now 20 something years, so more than half my life, but yes, so that's where I'm originally from, and now I live in South Carolina.
That's awesome. So, you guys are having it nice and warm then in South Carolina, I would assume.
You would think so. It's warming up. It was kind of a nasty week. We're like, oh, like what's happening this week?
I live in Saskatchewan, Canada, and so it gets cold here, like really cold. So like it was October and like yesterday it was snowing a bit, and I'm like,
Oh,
ugh.
not wait for that.
Good luck.
uh,
I'll send it to you.
yes. Well, actually, I do miss snow. That I do miss. That's the only thing I miss about winter. Not the cold, though.
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone misses the cold, but
Yeah. I like sun. Yes.
so I thought we'd jump in today, and you've told us or told me that picky eating isn't just a behavior problem, that it's actually a biology problem. So, what do you mean by that? And how does understanding biology change how we help get our kids to eat better?
Yes. So I love this question because I think it's so important, especially when it comes to picky eating, because majority of treatment options there are very much rooted in behavior. So when kids struggle to eat, oftentimes we kind of label them as maybe defiant or being difficult or sometimes even a little bratty, like testing limits. They're gonna grow out of it, and we hear that a lot from well-meaning friends and relatives, and sometimes even pediatricians. And yes, it could be a phase, but currently statistics are 1 in 4 children are a true picky eater, and those statistics are growing. So that's over 25% of kids right now.
Wow.
So it's not always the case, but in reality, what drives those behaviors is their biology. So if there is any type of like gut inflammation, if there's any type of blood sugar dysregulation going on, if there is some nervous system, dysregulation where the child is kind of stuck in a fight or flight mode, if they have any type of medical issues, if they're constipated, if they have acid reflux, if they can't chew very well, if there is oral motor issues, there could be a lot of things going on in their biology that are driving these so-and-so behaviors because they just can't physically eat right now because they're either uncomfortable, they don't have the skill, or something is going on that's preventing them from eating. And if they're having gut health, oftentimes that's going to also drive up these behaviors because of the gut-brain connection. And a lot of our neurotransmitters, serotonin, they're produced in the gut. This is our feel-good chemical. Like if we don't have that properly going into our brain, sending us messages like, I like food, like this makes me happy, things are going to get dysregulated and behaviors are going to start. So once we support their biology, by balancing their meals, by working on gut health, calming their nervous system, oftentimes, more often than not, that's going to drive their curiosity, and it's going to reduce these behaviors from from happening.
That's incredible. And I'm actually like, I'm always learning something new on this podcast, because I did not know that people actually thought that that was like a behavioral issue. If anyone's listened to episodes in the past, I've talked about my struggle with eating. And I have also a very big belief that like kids, they're just little mini people. That's literally all they are.
Mm-hmm.
So for me to hear that people are like, oh yeah, it's a behavior issue, I'm like, excuse me, what? Because I'm like, I guess I have behavior issues then, because I really have always classified myself also as a picky eater because I've struggled with it for a lot of my lifetime. And
Uh-huh.
so when I hear something like this, I'm like, oh, hopefully this is a sign to people like, see, there's bigger issues under the surface always.
Usually, especially in how toxic our world is right now, right? Like we're in
Yes.
contact with about 80,000 chemicals every day, and the chronic disease is on the rise. It's just skyrocketing. So things are going to be affected, and picky eating is a symptom of something happening.
Yeah.
It's not a diagnosis in any way, shape, or form. Like I think picky eating sometimes takes the shape of that, of like
Yeah.
people start to label themselves like, no, I'm a picky eater. You take on this identity, but it's not. It's just a symptom of something else happening. So I
Yeah.
think it's important to get to that root cause or causes, so that the picky eating can kind of
It's interesting
diminish.
how many things that we think are just like, oh, this is just an issue or this is who we are. It's actually all linked, really. Every little detail. Because like we've had different people on the show, and some people are like into sleep, and some people are, and
Yeah,
everything is like, oh, this is actually just a symptom, and there's a root
yeah.
cause, and you're like, oh boy. I, some days you
Yeah.
feel like the packaging label of some of those drugs, where it's like these symptoms may include blah 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 blah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Our body is complicated. Oh man, and it's usually
Absolutely.
when something's off, like something else is causing it.
Yes,
So yeah, for sure. And sleep can also very much be a disturbance that causes picky eating because it disturbs our gut health. I think if you have like 48 hours of bad sleep or even less, like it affects your gut for like 3 days or 4 days. Like
oh wow.
it just lowers your immune system. So everything is so connected. So, and it's impossible to live in this bubble of like this perfect environment where there's chemical free and I sleep perfectly and I eat perfectly and I do everything perfectly. Uh, but we can adjust some things to really make a difference in our health, which is
Absolutely.
important as long as you know about it.
Like you said, it's not perfect. Nothing could be perfect. If
No,
anyone's
nothing
telling
can
you that,
be,
I like,
unfortunately.
no.
Yeah,
I'm like
it's
hands
impossible.
down. I'm like, no, it doesn't. You can't make it perfect. Sorry.
I know.
So I want to know, how did your personal and your professional experiences lead you to create your Bloom framework that you mentioned before to us? And what makes it different from any other like traditional feeding kind of approach that people are talking about today?
Yeah. So the Bloom framework was really born equal parts out of science and my nerdiness and digging into the holistic healing part of my journey, and survival with a picky eater, and 13 years of experience in the field. So it's kind of a mix of things. But I was very much trained as a behavioral, almost feeding therapist, going into the field, and a lot of places still do that. They still focus on it, because when you think about like my job as an SOP, it is not talking about the medical aspect of things unless it's really oral motor or swallowing, because this is within our scope of practice. So branching out into the other areas, is not typically seen in these types of roles, just because we're not trained for it, and it's not malicious. It's just the way that it is. Same thing with occupational therapists. And these are typically the people that you will see for feeding therapy, as well as pediatricians, right? But typically there is a disconnect somewhere because we're not trained in this. So if you're not working in this, like in a team of professionals, it's really hard to address all of these areas. So this is why I thought there is such a big disconnect that I needed to kind of bring it together, into this one framework, so people kind of knew what to look for. And even if you can't find it within like one provider, you know who to go to if you need help in these areas,
Right.
right? Because it can be very much an interdisciplinary thing working with picky eaters. So that's really where it was born from, and it was kind of weird. Like it came to me almost like a download one night. Like I was just laying around thinking about all these things, and I didn't really have a framework. I was just like, okay, well, I know like biology is really important. This is really important. This is really important. And I was laying in bed, almost going to sleep. And I was like, oh, okay, so these are the 5 areas we need to address. And it kind of just came to me
Oh,
naturally.
wow.
So I wrote it all down. I didn't have the words for it exactly. I just wrote down what were the areas, the components of the framework. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then I came up with the acronym like Bloom and everything. And that's how it all came together. But I really think there's a desperate need to look beyond behaviors. And I needed to kind of map it out for others so they knew how to address it. Because I think there just isn't one tool you can use for this.
Yep.
There is not an evaluation out there that you can look at. There is not really a professional really talking about it much. So I just wanted to bring it all together. So it's kind of easier. So we have this framework. So it doesn't only have to be used by me, but everybody else. Like if you learn about it, I would be so thrilled if we looked at children from this lens.
I love that. And I always like to say is that when things like when you were just laying around and it came
Yeah.
to you, that just shows how passionate that you are about it. Like I always like to say those, like the passionate people that have it like just stem almost out of them. Kind of like, you get your root system going and then boom, you get your flower, your tree. And I'm like, oh, that's always like the best because it really means that it lives and it's like really passion project for you. So
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that so
Oh,
much.
thank you. I didn't even like think about it that way, but yeah, it feels very good in my heart. So I was like, okay, well, this is great. Like I am very passionate about this. So thank you.
I'm so glad. And thank you for sharing that with us. I'm hoping we'll get to hear more about it at the end and everything too a little bit. But
Yeah.
I know we were talking earlier about the gut a little bit and how that's kind of really connected with this. So what is that gut brain connection and how does gut health actually influence a child's like mood, the appetite, and maybe the willingness to try new foods?
Oh, very much so. Yes. So the gut and the brain are just in constant communication. So they're connected through this like super highway called the vagus nerve, and of course it's a lot more intricate than that. But like there's constantly they're talking to each other, and a lot of our feel good chemicals, neurotransmitters such as serotonin, our dopamine, everything is kind of made in the gut. So when the gut is inflamed and the microbiome is off balance, kids can feel anxious, they can feel moody, they can feel irritable, and they can, eating can become a lot more stressful. It Dysregulated gut can also affect hunger cues, right? Some kids might feel like full after 2 bites, and some kids might just be starving and wanting carbs all day, and just this body looking for quick energy. That could also be because of like blood sugar dysregulation. And it's usually a sign that there's an overgrowth of just this bad bacteria in the gut, just some microbes that are starving for those carbs because this is typically their energy source, sugar and carbs. So if you're really craving that, that's typically a sign that there is some kind of gut imbalance. And we can see that a lot in some kids, like even kids on the autism spectrum. We hear a lot about the beige diet and, them just being very picky and only eating like chicken nuggets, which are coated in carbs. They're eating just, toast, or they're just eating mac and cheese and just carbs, 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 and usually like beige color, because that's what they can tolerate and that's what they're craving right now. So when we work on this gut integrity, when we start to shift it in the right direction, because I think working on our gut health is something that is kind of lifelong.
Yeah.
It's just such a, it's not just like a one fix where I'm just gonna take some probiotics and I'm good. Like it's never like that. It's a very much a living organism. We have so many microbiomes within our body that we constantly want to be sure that we're giving it the right environment to thrive. But once we're supporting it and we're supporting our mitochondrial health and adapting the right light environment, which the light environment actually influences our gut microbiome more than food. I think it's about like 51% versus 50%. Once we're feeding the birth microbes, and I am such a big fan of Mary Ruddick's work. I don't know if you are familiar with
I
her.
haven't heard of her, so new research
Okay.
afterwards.
Yes. Oh my God, I'm obsessed. Like I'm a fangirl. Some people love Taylor Swift. I love Mary Ruddick. Learning all about the gut from her. um, So, and when we're honoring our circadian rhythms and the rhythm of the day, like kids, they just naturally feel calmer. They start to become hungrier at meal times. They're more open to new experiences because they're not in this like this regulated fight or flight um, environment all the time within their body. Because again, like the gut dictates our emotions so much. So it's amazing how much all of that is connected and how it affects each other.
Wow, that's really incredible. And especially, I just think from my own self experience a little bit on how, like, just in say the past 10 years, if I look back, how much gut changes really have happened. And I've moved around a lot. So I always believe that when
Mhm.
you move around and you're in different environments, your body has to change to all that too. So
Of
I'm just
course.
like, oh, and like I had an abscess last year. So I ended up having antibiotics. And after that, I've really paid attention to gut health because
Mhm.
of all that. So,
Yeah.
just when we think about it, like we're very common to think on how to help ourselves. But when they're little, it's oftentimes that we kind of forget that they kind of have the same systems that are just starting out and growing and changing.
Yeah.
And I think we
Very much
sometimes
so.
forget about that. Like, it's so common. Oh, they're so little. They don't have to worry about that kind of problem. But actually, they
Oh,
do.
no.
We just don't know about
Yeah.
it. We're not focused on it. And it's such
Right.
a shame that
Yeah.
we live in a world where it's not talked about enough. Like it's not brought up
Yeah.
that, there is no guide to having children, but
Mm.
how do we want to take care of ourselves? And then how can we apply that to our children? I think is a really big key statement here that,
Yeah,
we need to look at them too.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it starts from birth, right?
Yeah.
Because at birth, children, our babies, they go through the vaginal microbiome, through the
Yeah.
vaginal canal. And if they're not going through it, they might not be collecting all the birth microbes that they need from the get-go if they're a C-section baby. And then, when you are a C-section baby, you're given antibiotics. Mom is giving some strong antibiotics. So you're kind of at a disadvantage
Yeah.
starting off. So knowing that, I think being very conscious about this when you are giving birth, like there's so many different things that I've learned from Mary that you can do to support that baby after, during nursing. Hopefully you can nurse because I think aside from having a vaginal birth, which is so beneficial for us, it's not always possible, of course, but when possible, it's so beneficial. But nursing is just breastfeeding is just another area where we establish and feed those good birth microbes. So we establish this really strong microbiome. So
Yeah.
knowing that from the beginning, really fighting to, if you are able to nurse, and if you can't, learning about what can I do to really help my child shape their microbiome from the beginning so that we're not setting them up for a life of chronic disease, which
Yeah.
unfortunately happens to a lot of kids. Chronic disease is like affecting about 60% of kids right now,
Wow.
like going up, like those rates are skyrocketing. So that we're doing something wrong. And I think we need to be shifting our mindset a little bit here.
That's a lot of kids. That's a
Yeah,
lot.
a
Especially when
lot.
you think
Yeah.
I'm assuming, is that just American status or, like, worldwide
I
60%?
think those are American
Oh,
for,
okay.
yeah. But the world is not far behind,
No,
depending on, yeah,
sadly.
depending on the country, because
Yeah,
everybody has kind of different methods,
yeah.
and different schedules for things and how kids are brought up. But I know we can be doing so much better.
So, I guess I wanna know your thoughts on how do we help the parents tell the difference between the typical picky phase and a true feeding issue that they might have that needs professional support?
Yeah, so, like a typical picky eating phase, which we hear about, because like once you have a baby, and they start to become like a little bit picky, show some picky tendencies, we do hear it as like, oh, this is very normal. They're gonna grow out of it, and that could be very much true, right? Because kids are exploring, they're learning their bodies, they're growing, they're becoming more conscious about what they're doing, and there is actually this window of opportunity up until about their 18 months of age where you can honestly introduce them and help them explore almost any flavor, any type of texture, and they're willing to take it.
Oh, wow.
After that window, and if you haven't really done a great job helping them explore, it's harder to introduce different foods. But like a typical picky eating phase typically lasts like a few weeks, a few months. Sometimes it will show up after a child has been sick and their appetite kind of dwindled, and then it comes back after a few weeks. It could be kind of environmental. So perhaps they're being picky at home because I'm with mom and I know what to do here versus I'm going to go to grandma's house. I'm going to eat anything. Like it doesn't matter. Or at school, I
Yeah.
eat anything. Right. So that's kind of like a phase. Right. But when you're looking at kind of like a chronic problem with picky eating, that's when it becomes long term. It becomes very disruptive when you're noticing things are, maybe the child is gagging a lot, and babies will gag, but they will outgrow that phase. But the child continues to gag past a certain age. They're choking on some consistencies, they're holding foods, they're really strict with what they're going to eat. They kind of get really freaked out when there's new food in front of them. Like there is a different spectrum of picky eating almost, where some kids are just like severely picky, where they literally can't even be next to a food, even if it's not expected of them to eat it. They can't even smell it in the house
Oh, wow.
versus like, I just like really don't want to try this. Um, so it's a big spectrum, but usually picky eating will affect the health status in some way, right? Because you can't
Absolutely.
feed them the right foods. Sometimes they're a failure to thrive because they're really not growing properly. So there is a difference there.
Absolutely. Especially like each food has different nutrients we need. And if we're not
Mhm.
somehow able to balance that out, yeah,
Yeah.
that's very possible. But I guess
Yeah.
I'm assuming there's probably some parents who probably feel pretty guilty, or maybe they seem defeated about it because nothing is working. So what advice would you give them? What could you tell them to kind of like help them like relax on that, to not raise their stress level, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want them to know like you haven't failed and it's not too late. It's never too late to start to bring some changes. And your child isn't broken. Like there are so many different little shifts that you can do to actually help them feel safer and connected, and to start to address some of those biological needs that they may have around picky eating. So really just, I want you to take a step back, take a deep breath, and let's start to observe. Let's try to figure out like what is really happening here. Is my child able to chew correctly? Is my child able to swallow foods correctly? Are they having issues there? Are they chronically constipated? Are they in pain when they're eating? Do they have reflux? Like I'm going to watch for signs. What happens after they have, tomato sauce pasta? Are they complaining of a tummy ache an hour later or two? Like just watch your child, take a step back, watch your child for any signs of discomfort or something happening. If you already know that your child has a chronic disease of some sort, like maybe they have eczema, maybe they have asthma, maybe there's something else happening. Um, I would definitely look into the gut component. And honestly, I will look into the gut component into every child just because of the toxic environment we live in. We all need gut support right now. That's just where we are. Because it is so rare for us, for our children, and even for the moms of our children to not have had antibiotics, to not have had like some kind of a disruptive lifestyle that could have caused issues in their gut, because we really, pass down our good and the bad guys in the gut to our kids too. So all of that plays a role, right?
Yeah.
So just taking a step back, if your child was a C-section, we already know they're missing some birth microbes that are going to affect their microbiome. So just looking a step back, working on their gut a little bit. So maybe you're going to, I love the meat stock from Gaps. It's kind of like a meat soup that is usually like an easy introduction for kids to start eating a little bit. And then Mary Ruddick talks a lot. I know I bring her up a lot, but she's just a pioneer in this field. So she talks about feeding the birth microbes. And
Okay.
there is like certain foods that you can actually consume in tiny amounts. It's super easy because it's not like you need to eat like a piece of steak. No, it's literally taking a little bit of like green plantain powder, and you can some HMO powder, and you can add that for your child to a smoothie, and you can start to feed those, and that's going to do wonders for their gut and also getting out in the sun. That is fun for kids. And I know it's probably hard to do in a cold winter Saskatchewan, but
Yeah.
as much as you can, being outside and grounding and doing all the natural things that's going to do wonders for their gut and their health in general and their nervous system regulation. And if you really are unsure of where to start, I always say start with connection. Just connect with your child, just hug them, breathe with them. Take a step back before you're about to sit down for a meal, which you're assuming is going to get hectic. They're not going to like, the broccoli on the table. They're going to get really upset. They're not going to want to eat it. That's fine. Just take a step back before you sit down from, getting home from work and creating this beautiful meal and running around trying to get everything ready. Just connect with them. And that could be a moment of breathing together, hugging, just playing, asking them a question, depending on their age, right? How was
Yeah,
your day? Or how did this project go? Or, something that they can be proud of. It could be anything that just really works for your child and you know your child best. That's going to make them happy. So you give them this like moment of connection and happiness before you sit down for your meal and see how the energy will shift there. Versus just like, everybody sit down, it's time for dinner, and every home has a different kind of routine around their mealtime. But I think just creating this calm and connected environment can go a really long way.
absolutely. I mean, I just always, I don't have children myself, so I always think back on my own like childhood in a sense
Hmm.
when we talk these kind of things. And we were the very like, and we still to this day, it's family meal. You sit together, you ask each other about the day, that kind of stuff. And so it kind of makes it a little bit of a
Right.
nicer eating environment. So, I mean, I remember even
Yeah.
as a younger kid talking a little bit just to kind of talk for the sake of talking where you can.
Yeah. I think it's great. I think we lose that a little bit in this modern world, right? Because we're like still getting emails from work or we're checking social media or something at the table. So I think just maybe making family dinners, if we can, this like kind of like almost sacred ritual where phones are not allowed. We're just together. We're
Yeah,
connecting like we used to do in the 90s and the early 2000s before the iPhone came out, because we're losing that so much and that's affecting our kids, like the
absolutely.
way that they're eating.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm also a preschool teacher, so I kind of see how
Yeah.
they interact. And like, I can't tell you this year how many kids have told me, "Oh, I'm using this as a pretend phone, or this is a phone," and they're making it out of magnetic box. And I'm like, but what if it wasn't a phone? What if it's a chopping board, or what if it's something just other thing to try to like? There's more than a phone. Just
Yeah.
and I feel bad for them. They got a really kind of like old school. Like I was born in 2000, but I grew up kind of
Mhm.
even old school from that. So I kind of
Yeah.
am like, I feel bad for you kids, but you got someone who's a little bit old school thinking for you guys.
I think it's good for them.
Yeah,
Imagination is key here for so many
absolutely.
different, even like language development, everything else. So,
Yes.
I think you're steering them in the right direction.
So I was thinking back on my brother, and he doesn't listen to this, so he doesn't know that I'm spilling his guts. But he really struggled with eating when he was younger. And so much so that my father and mother would like kind of like, oh, if you eat this many bites, you get like marshmallow or you get this. So I was just thinking of like what other steps, maybe realistic, that parents could take just to make the mealtime feel a little bit calmer, less like
Yeah.
I know you mentioned a whole lot about like how we need to really be connected, try to like hug or play with them beforehand. But is
Yeah.
there any other tip, or maybe like what else would you have done in a situation similar to that? Maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would definitely be looking at, the biological reasoning underneath that, but that's a different topic.
Yeah.
I think what we can do at home is look at our light environment even. We're
Um,
surrounded by these bright lights. They're just everywhere. The LED lights that are so dysregulating to our circadian rhythm, the blue light, it affects our gut microbiome, it affects our mood. So I would probably look to maybe like have like a candlelight dinner once in a while, make it fun,
that'd be fun.
relaxing, like dim the lights, maybe change the light bulbs by the dining room table or in the kitchen so it's not so disruptive and so stressful, because it truly is stressful to our environment, to our biology, because we we come from our ancestors who didn't have access to all this
Yeah.
electricity. This was introduced like what, 150 years ago or something like that. And our biology has not caught up with that. We have not evolved to need this type of electricity for our health. So we have to be very mindful of that. And I know it sounds kind of like out there, like, what do you want me to do? Just like live by the fire? Like, no, but you can really, really change the lighting environment in your house, and so that it is not so disruptive to your
Yeah.
body. So I actually, in my bedroom, I even have red lights. So at night, if the lights are on, they're red, so they're really warm, kind of like mimicking the fire. They're not flickering, because it makes a big difference. So
Yeah.
all of that, even though it's not dinner time, when the red lights are on, but it's already going to impact my biology moving forward, my sleep, my next day, my circadian rhythm. It all affects each other. So I would definitely look into the light environment. I would have boundaries at the mealtime table, because kids need boundaries, healthy boundaries, where they know when we're eating, what's on the table, what's expected of me. And we can use some positive reinforcement if we want to, but I wouldn't necessarily make it food. I would probably make it something else. However, that wouldn't be my first thing to do.
Okay.
I wouldn't go with that first, because again, that's this kind of like behavioral approach. I would look at changing the environment first, look at hopefully supporting their biology, their gut health first. And usually by then, we don't need the marshmallows. Yeah.
Well, I think they were just getting desperate at the point of that. But
And we do because, eating, like, we want our kids to eat. Like, if you're
yeah.
not eating, that means you're not going to be well. You're not going to be growing. You're not going to be developing. So I get it. We're desperate.
Yeah. I
And
I
I
remember
get
how
it.
scared my parents were. I do. I really remember
Yeah.
it all the time. Like because I remember one time after dinner, they were like, "We don't want to take you to a hospital, so like, can you try to eat?" I still remember it a lot
Oh,
because it was really like hard time for my brother. So
yeah.
that's why when you were mentioning, I was like, oh, I just wonder what other thoughts would maybe be possible. Help someone else who's listening, right?
Yeah, and I always like family style meals. So
Yeah.
instead of like giving everybody their individual plate of already pre-made food, you can also have like tapa style meals. Like, I lived in Spain for a year. I love that lifestyle. I think it's
Yeah.
wonderful because you have many tapas, and then you pick, I want some of this, I want some of that. And I think doing that for our kids, it's great. And if the child is not ready to try everything, that's fine. But maybe they can serve it on your plate, right? Maybe
Yeah.
that broccoli, I'm going to give it to Elizabeth. I'm going to give it to my mom. I'm going to give it to anybody else, on the table, so that they can actually interact with it.
Yeah.
And then if that's too much, you also take a step back, where maybe you can also, before it's cooked, you help mom cut that broccoli, right? If that's
Yeah.
the goal for you to eat, maybe you can help wash it. Maybe you can go to the garden and pick a fruit or a veggie we're going to eat for dinner. Maybe you're going to go grocery shopping, so you see what's out there, you get to pick what you want to make this week. It's just kind of like taking a step
Yeah.
back and taking that pressure off of needing to eat,
Allowing them
which can
choice.
seem like a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we do need to do that. We have to let our kids explore in a safe environment, as we're creating also a safe environment within their body and within their home.
Yeah. And it gives them just some choice as well on like
Yeah.
what they want. Because like I always say, would you like it if I just made you dinner and you didn't care what it was?
Yeah.
Like, you like the choice of things, and we have dislikes and likes as well as we get older. So it's
Oh, for
definitely
sure.
I love the idea, especially about the serving it, because I watch a TikTok. I cannot remember the name, so I'm sorry, but she always does like a meal, and then each of her kids, they're not on screen, but then they'll say, oh, I want this, I want that, I want that. And so like she'll do soup bowls or she'll do tacos, and she just shows you there's more than just tacos or something
Yeah.
that you could pick other meals like pieces for it. So it's always very interesting, like that kind
Yeah.
of style as well.
Yeah. And it gives them control, right?
Yes.
Kids want control
Yeah, they
since
very much
they're
do.
little. So even if you're in control as the parent, because you're deciding, we're going to have these dishes on the table, that's your way to control, but then they can control their plate, and
Yeah,
that can really make a difference for them.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
you were talking earlier about your Bloom framework, and we know you help people very much with this field. So are you virtual? Do you help people in person? Like, how can people work with you and find you? I know we'll have some links in the description, everyone, but tell
Yeah.
us a little bit where they can find you and such.
Yeah, so I work virtually. I can work anywhere within the United States or outside of the United States. So I offer virtual parent coaching. So it's a big shift from what I used to do because I used to work with the child,
Okay.
where we did therapy and we worked on, increasing their food repertoire. And then the family was kind of just like a supportive factor. But now what I do is I work with the parents and we do coaching. So we can actually work on
Okay.
that environment and we can work on the health aspect, whether I need to refer you out, whether we can do it together. It depends, right? Depending on severity of what's going on. But that's what I do because I think that's where real change happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if we're just working with a child for 30 minutes a week or twice a week, and we're doing it in like a therapeutic setting outside of the home, it can be a little bit helpful, but I think there's a huge disconnect. And because we're not addressing anything in the home, it doesn't work. So that's what I do. I work with parents, and you can find me on my website, lenalivinsky.com. I actually offer this coaching program. It's called the Picky Eating Reset, where it's a 3-month program. We can work together. We can go through the entire Bloom framework, look at all the aspects of Bloom, the balanced health, learn oral motor skills. We look at the gut microbiome, we'll look at open exploration, and we look at mealtime boundaries, and we set up kind of a system. First, we do this long intake where we look at the child together, and then we have a plan and follow-up sessions as you're implementing these changes at home. So
Perfect.
it's a fill. So typically I do 3 months, and it's typically, a really good enough time to make a big difference in your child's life.
Absolutely. So, everyone listening, if you're not driving, all the other times you may, but pause the video, make sure you go click that link so you can open and check it out later. But my one last
Yeah.
question that I kind of surprise people, put people on the spot is,
Okay.
what does being a woman mean to you? And it could be anything. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, I love that question. Oh, you know, it's such a it's an interesting thing to me where I used to be a tomboy when I was little, and I feel like
Okay.
I was always kind of like trying to be like more manly and all these things, and just be like a boy and be part of crew. Um, but I started to really appreciate womanhood as I got older, especially after becoming a mother and being able to create a home and to be able to create a place of safety and connection for my child. Um, I think it's magical, being able to become this type of woman where I can be my child's home. Like that to me is just mind blowing. So I think to me, being a woman it's almost like magic. You
I
can
love that.
literally create magic being a woman. It's so different. I would never want to be a man. I feel like I love the masculine energy, and me and my husband, like, clearly we live together, so I get to see a lot of the masculine energy around the home, and I'm so glad I'm a woman and have this feminine energy, and I'm able to be a bit of like a healer, a bit of a provider, a bit of the safety place for my child and for the community. And yeah, so I do think being a woman is magic.
I love that. That is an awesome answer. I always like last season I had a different kind of question at the end too. And it's always fascinating that even if you have like two people that work in the same field, it's a different answer. And
Yeah.
so I really love that kind of like that's why I've kind of tied it between because I'm like, hey everyone, although we're all different, see how we kind of ebb and flow in a similar way. So I love that. Thank you so much for your
Yeah.
answer.
You're welcome. Yeah, I hope, it made sense, but in my
Yes.
head,
Yes.
it's
Well, I'm so glad that you were able to come on and talk about this. And like I said, this kind of resonated really close to me because I've always had like picky eating as well, which now is like, oh, maybe there's a bigger issue kind of at heart there. So I really, really appreciate this conversation that we had. And everyone, I hope, did too.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. It was a blast. I'm
Yes.
glad I was able to talk about this.
Yes.
Okay.
And everyone listening, make sure you stay tuned next Monday for another episode.